Okay, welcome to the very first Clark and Miller podcast. Very quickly, I will introduce myself. My name's Gabriel. I am the Clark in Clark and Miller. It's a website for high-level English language learners. We have a blog, we have English Skype lessons, we have a book you can buy, and basically we do lots of weird, fun, interesting things to help you improve your English. And a lot of these things often feature giraffes. But not as much as you might think. So, welcome to episode 1 of the podcast. Today we're going to talk about say and tell. So, say and tell, right? We've come across this many times in our lives, right? We kind of have an idea about what they mean, right? But I know I did some research into this, and I discovered some interesting things. And the more I looked into it, the more I realized that say and tell are they've both got their own sort of personalities. They both have a sort of different way of behaving and a different way of looking at things. So let's take a look at the differences and similarities between say and tell. So let's look at say. I want you to imagine say as a character. She's very analytical. She likes to focus on the details. The context isn't so important for her. She's just interested in the words. What exactly was said? And now I want you to think about tell. Tell is also a different character. He likes looking at the words too, but he's also much more interested in the generalities, the general things, the bigger picture. He likes the context more than the details. So this is the general difference between say and tell in my mind after doing the research on this. Let's check out the big differences. Let's check out the big similarities between say and tell. Say being very analytical and tell being very general. All right, so I want you to picture a Venn diagram. You know what a Venn diagram is, right? It's when you have these sorts of circles, and sometimes the circles overlap, and each circle would define something. So if you can just picture a circle that represents say, and a circle that represents tell, and imagine them overlapping. So most of each circle is not in the same place, is not overlapping with each other, but a little part is. This little part of the Venn diagram is where we can use either say or tell, things that both say and tell can do at the same time. So we've seen that say and tell have different personalities, and we'll check these out in a bit. But first, let's just look at this area of the Venn diagram that they have in common. What kind of language, what kind of use of English can we use both say and tell? Well, the answer is quite simple. The answer is reported speech. Reported speech, or what some people call indirect speech. This is when we're reporting other people's words and what they said, more or less word by word. So I don't want to get into, the grammar of reported speech here. We can do that in another podcast. So let's just get some basic examples up. Let's get a nice, weird, strange, crazy image going. Imagine you're taking your kid to Florida, and Florida is amongst other things. It's got Disney World and lots of surfing. And I remember being a kid and going to Florida and discovering how gigantic the cups could be. If you order a large cola from a cafe, you get this 2-liter cup of cola. That's America. But this is kind of irrelevant. You're taking your kid to Florida and not going to Disneyland, or not picking up large cups of cola. You're going to NASA. You're going to one of the NASA, I don't know, is it called stations, ports, buildings where they launch the space rockets. And you're lucky because you're going to Florida and you're going to watch a spaceship launch with your son. And you're there, but your son doesn't like it. Why? Well, it's too noisy. And he tells you that. He says, it's too noisy. So when we're reporting this speech, you could simply say, he said that the spaceship was too noisy, or he told me that the spaceship was too noisy. As you notice, we have he said without the listener and he told me with the listener. But in terms of grammar, they're both doing the same thing. This is reported speech, and you can use say or tell with reported speech. He said the spaceship was too noisy, and he told me the spaceship was too noisy. That was quite an elaborate example for a very simple rule, but that's okay. We've got time, and it's nice to go to Florida. It's a very beautiful place. Okay, so this is where say and tell. This is what say and tell have in common. You can use them both for reported speech. But this is where things get interesting. What about the things that only say can do? And what about the things that only tell can do? Well, this is when if you picture your Venn diagram and there's these two circles and there's a little bit overlapping, we're going to now look at the say circle and the parts of the say circle where it doesn't overlap with tell. Let's dig a little deeper, because say and tell have their own separate personalities, which means that there are some things that say can do that tell can't, and vice versa. So you remember that say often focuses more on the actual words that somebody says. Say is more detail-oriented, word-by-word oriented. Tell is good if you want to focus on the information more than the words. But say is more about the words themselves. So that's why when we want to report somebody's direct words, we would use say. If you want to report word by word, let's go for another elaborate example. So we can say, as the twins walked into the room, they both looked at me and said, hello, at the same time. It was very weird. Okay, so they looked at me and they said, hello. So here we've got say reporting the exact word. And especially when we're looking at reporting speech of simple words and simple phrases. Hello, thank you, goodbye. Wow, look at that. Come here. Things like that. We would just use say. We can't say, I know Kubra never tells me thank you. It's just never do it. Don't do it. Go to Florida instead or something. So when we're looking at what phrases and words like hello, thank you, goodbye, always use say. Remember, if you want to use the listener, we can always say, he said hello to me. And we can add to me at the end. But never use tell when you're using the exact words. And that goes on not just with words and phrases, but it can also be sentences. So you wouldn't say, he told me I don't like it. This is direct speech. This is word by word reporting of the speech. So we would use say. Okay, so that's really it for say. Say is just when you're looking at the exact words, when you're reporting word by word what somebody said. So let's move on to the next part of the Venn diagram and look at the tell circle. Okay, so we've got our two circles, the say circle, the tell circle. We've looked at the overlap, which is reported speech. We've looked at the say part, which is the direct speech. Now, let's look at the tell part. And this part is much bigger. This is a bigger circle. Tell is a very versatile word. It's got so much character. So Where we've seen how say tends to focus on the actual words, tell, on the other hand, is more useful when you want to talk about the general message, when the words themselves aren't so important. So in a way, like I said, this makes tell more versatile. We can use it in more situations, basically. What are those situations? You may be asking right now with your usual excitement and enthusiasm. Well, calm down. I am going to tell you. Those situations are, first, you can use tell to report a general message. So it's a general message of what's said, not word by word account, but just a general overview or a summary of what somebody said. Usually when we're talking about what somebody said, we don't have the time or the energy, or we're too lazy, or it's just unnecessary to report every single word. Also, probably we wouldn't remember every single word. When we hear things, when people talk to us, when we communicate with language, we always remember the message more strongly than the specific words. And this is when tell is very useful. When you want to report what someone says, you just need the message, not every single word. So we have a structure: tell someone, and then a question word, and then a sentence. So we have this question word: who, what, where, when, how many, how much. And we can use them after tell someone to report a general report generally what somebody said, report a general message. Okay, so let's look at some examples. You can say, I can't tell him what happened, he'll kill me. I can't tell him what happened. You can say, we need to tell them where they can park their bikes when the office is closed. We need to tell them where they can park their bikes. Or one more example. Shall I tell her how we installed the virus that wiped out the whole system? Okay, so shall I tell her how we installed the virus? So these are all like places or methods or things that we can summarize using question words. Okay, so that's one way of reporting a general message. We can also report a general message with the preposition about. You can tell someone about something. I love the word about because every time I hear it, I just hear the Canadian about, which is quite funny, but I'm not entirely sure if really that is just something people say that Canadians say, or if it's really something Canadians actually say. This is irrelevant, but about. Or about, if you're in a fictional Canadian world. So yeah, tell someone about something. Again, you can just add a noun after this. So you can say something like, tell him about the new Star Wars film, because it was so good. Okay, I'm going to get loads of very negative emails about that one. The Star Wars films, the new ones, they are good. Trust me on this one, I'm right. You can also say, do you really have to tell me about this? It's kind of disgusting. Do you really have to tell me about this? Yeah, so tell someone about something. If you just want the topic, the noun, the thing, about the new Star Wars film, about this. Yeah, and this structure is quite good, quite useful, because we also have quite a fun phrase called, it's not called, the phrase is, tell me about it. I always think of this in an American accent because I think it's originally an American phrase, which, spread like a lot of American things tend to do. So yeah, tell me about it. But what does it mean? Like if you say, tell me about it, you're not really asking somebody to tell you about something. This is a phrase that it shouldn't be taken literally. It shouldn't be taken directly. When you use this phrase, you're sending a signal. You're actually saying something. Excuse me, that was my phone. You're also saying something like, yeah, I know this as much as anyone else does, and I totally agree. So yeah, tell me about it is a way of saying like, yeah, I know because I experience it too, and I completely agree with you. Usually we use it for when we're talking about things that are kind of ridiculous. Okay, so yeah, like I want you to imagine a shop, and it's Christmas time, and people are buying lots of Christmas presents, and it's a busy time, but it's a festive time. People are in a good mood. And people like to talk to each other a bit more during the Christmas season than other times of the year. And I want you to picture a guy who's shopping with one of his kids. And his kid is buying a massive Lego kit. And Lego is awesome, but one thing about Lego we all know is that it's quite expensive. And the father looks across to another woman who's in the shop, and she's got 7 kids. They're all running around her, and they're all throwing toys in her face. Not literally, but they're saying, Mom, Mummy, can I have this one? Can I have this one? Can I have this one? And these toys are also very expensive because it's that kind of shop. And the father turns to the mother and says, "Whoa, kids are expensive, right?" What does the mother say? Yeah, you guessed it. All she needs to say is, "Tell me about it." So it's a way of forming a sort of bond with somebody, forming a kind of connection with somebody by sharing an experience or talking about how the two people have like a similar experience. And it's a nice, polite, pleasant thing to do. It's a good way to make friends. Tell me about it. So usually for things that are kind of ridiculous, like, kids are expensive, right? Tell me about it. Or, oh my God, this hill is really steep. When are we going to get to the top? This is taking so long. Yeah, tell me about it. Usually a way to make life a little better by sharing negative experiences with someone. Okay, so that's how to use tell to report a general message. You can also use tell to give orders. Orders that must be obeyed at all times. That's when we use tell. Well, actually, it can be orders or requests as well. So we can use tell when we want to give an order or a request, make a request. We tell someone to do something. It's quite simple. That's all there is to it. Let's look at some lovely examples. You can say, "Please tell me to stop if you get bored." Or, "I'm tired of telling you not to put soya milk all over the laptop. Just please stop." Or you can say, "When will you tell him to leave? He's still here. He's not leaving." So this is just any sort of request or an order. You can also use say for this. So you got to tell someone to do something, tell him to close the door. But you can also use it with say. Remember not to include the listener here. You can say to do something, but be careful. This is quite informal and some people don't like it. But I'm going to give you an example anyway because people use it. So here's the example. You can say, "Sorry, am I in the wrong room? The website said to come to room 144. So, yes, you can use tell as a kind of order. Okay, and there's one more way we can use tell. So we've had tell to report a general message. I can't tell him what happened. Or tell me about the new Star Wars film. You can use tell as a kind of order or request. Please tell him to close the door. And you can also use tell with a noun. So this is when tell gets really quite general when we use it with a noun. So it's not even really talking about the words. So we've gone from say, which we use to report exact words, very precise, very detail oriented. And then to tell, which we can use it for reported speech, but we can also bring it out to more and more general ways. So tell me about the Star Wars film, quite general. Tell him to close the door, quite general. And then we can use it with a noun, which is really very general, a completely sort of a summary of something. So, for example, we can tell the truth, or we can tell a lie, or we can tell a joke. So we can tell the truth. We can tell a lie. We can make people laugh by telling them a joke or telling a joke. We can impress people by telling the future. Except you can't. No one can tell the future. Except maybe for Meg. I get the feeling Meg can. But anyway, yeah, we can tell a lie, tell the truth, tell a noun. Sometimes when you use it with a noun, tell can also mean something closer to understand. So that's why when you're a kid, you learn to tell the time. And it's why you can talk about how difficult it is to, tell the difference between two twins. Or tell the difference between green and blue, as some colorblind people have problems with. Or is it green and yellow? I'm not sure. I have some problems telling the difference between pink and red sometimes. So that's it, really. So let's just recap really quickly. Say is very detail-oriented. Tell is happier to be a bit more general. Say and tell, you can use both for reported speech. He said that he was too old, or he told me that he was too old. Direct speech is best with say, generally speaking. She politely said goodbye. If you want to talk about the general message, we probably would use tell. Tell me about your holiday, for example. If you want to give an order or a request, again, most of the time we tend to use tell. Don't worry, I won't tell you to do that again. But you can use said, but remember it's quite informal. The newspaper said to vote for them, so I did. You can also, finally, going on its most abstract form, use tell with a noun. Tell me a good story. She loves telling jokes. Don't bother, he never tells the truth. Right, so don't bother, he never tells the truth. But I tell the truth most of the time, and all of this was true. I told you everything there is to know about tell and say. So yeah, that's it really. It's quite an interesting little trip into these two words that seem, at the beginning, they seem to be the same. But the more you look into it, the more you see they have different personalities, different characters. Okay, so finally, thanks for listening. This was the first one. I've actually really enjoyed this. It's gone a lot better than I thought it would, if I'm going to be completely honest with you. So before I finish, I just want to give you a few questions. Can you answer these questions? And can you send me the answers? You can send me any answers or any questions at all about about say and tell or anything else by sending an email to gabriel@clarkandmiller.com. That's gabriel@clarkandmiller.com. So here are the 3 questions for today's podcast. Question 1. Can you tell me your favorite joke? Question 2. What was the very last thing that you said? Not in your head, but that you said out loud. And question 3. This is quite interesting. How do you tell the difference between fake news and real news? How do you tell the difference between fake and real news? That's the one I really want to hear the answers for. That and the joke, actually. Okay, so yeah, send me an email, gabriel@clarkandmiller.com. Meanwhile, feel free to check out clarkandmiller.com. I write a blog post in theory every week, in practice a little less often than that. The blog posts are basically free language lessons, so go and check them out. Learn something new, and possibly you'll find a giraffe or two. And thanks very much for listening. This is the Clark and Miller blog. I'm Gabriel Clark, and have a wonderful day.